Hey, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through the Astro weather for September 3rd through the 9th, 2025. That is Wednesday, Mercury's day, through Tuesday, Mars's day, as I am Mercurian. It is my chart lord, Mercury, and also it's just what my recording schedule will allow for. Before we go forward, please like and subscribe. I really hope to be able to meet new clients. That's what I'm here to do, besides being insatiably curious about just how time works and seasons and flow. I also am curious about connecting with other people and helping them through the various seasons of their life as well. All right, so I think that's it. Oh, if you also are subscribed to my podcast with my peer Bender, we didn't get to record this week. Unfortunately, the eclipse season is definitely eclipsing us. Both of us. I currently have a rib out, which feels not great. And Bender has to get a new car. So, like, things are just going down in our lives. And so, hopefully, you can be patient with us and then just maybe hang out with me here while we get our lives back in alignment so that we can be on a regular schedule again. All right, so before we go into a play by play of the day by day, I want to orient us into time and space to talk about kind of the larger shifts that are happening that are more long term, omnipresent almost, deeper systemic sort of things because we're dealing with slower moving planets. So, like I spoke about last week, Pluto is now out of bounds, which an out of bounds planet tends to not really act as if it should. It acts a little bit wild, a little bit erratic. We cannot necessarily make all of the predictions that we would want to it. It just kind of does things in a very kind of different way, right? So if you have an out of bounds planet in your chart, it's kind of like in an unruly, untamed space to a certain extent. So Pluto, our planet of deep, deep soul wounds, obsessions, secrets, deep systemic shifts and cultural changes, right? Pluto in Aquarius is very like power, Pluto being a planet of power, but more like that subatomic power, not above, but like below, right? It's hell. But this like power to the people, deep structural power to the people. We are going to be investigating for the next 20 years of Pluto and Aquarius. What does it mean when communities and the and also governmental structures, because Aquarius has to do with the things that were created in Capricorn, that's like government, and then the Aquarius is like this, the structures that kind of bring us all together. There's something about utilitarianism and utopianism, and one for all and all for one. Musketeerism. um, but there's something about like the collective, right? The people and the sort of power that we're trying to take back from a government who has overstepped their bounds and promised a lot and underdelivered. And this has been globally, right? We have swaths and swaths of groups of people who are not being taken care of by the governments that we have imbued with a lot of power over hundreds of years, right? Or many, many decades of time. And now we're like, no, that we can't stand for this. And so we are going to be watching that as this planet, Pluto, is going in and out of bounds for the next 10 years. The declination to the south, there's declination to the north and the south. I think what we're going to see, and this is based off of the decades long studies and research of other astrologers, one namely Rosie Finn, that this is a time for the collective to start to retain and to regain and to take back through various measures and various ways, power from these oligarchs and these systems that no longer serve us. This has to do with political overthrow and revolution in general. We'll see if any of those words get me bumped on YouTube. Anyways, it's just a very interesting time for how society functions, and we are really going to be running down the gauntlet, Super Mario Kart style, for the next 10 years. And that is like a big, big baseline. What is also helping that, working with that, facilitating that, is that Pluto is in a trine to Uranus. Now, I think some modern astrologers would say Pluto in Aquarius is in a trine to its ruler, Uranus in Gemini, right? Uranus being the modern ruler of Aquarius. But also we have Saturn. That's the traditional ruler of Aquarius, having just gone back into Pisces. He's retrograde in Pisces, where he will be until February of 2015. So Saturn just turned around and went, I forgot something. I have to finish up some old business, some old, like end of the line business. I got to wrap up what needs to be wrapped up. I need to wrap up the endings of things. I really need to tie a nice little neat bow before we really go off in this new way, this new direction, this future. We go on new journeys, right? I need to just kind of really do what I do best, Saturn, which is end things. But also, let me go back. I did say that Pluto is in trine to Uranus and Gemini, which trine it has the nature of Jupiter. It's this flow, it is this ease, right? And there's almost like Uranus coming to trine, because it's faster than Pluto, is like coming to Pluto and it's like, let's shake things up, let's revolutionize, let's get weird. Let's bring some technology into this. Let's bring new ways of thinking. Let's bring new ways of speaking, right? Let's just bring new technology in how society functions. And so we're going to watch a very systemic change into how these things work. And we're just going to be watching a lot of like revolutionary change in especially communications, I think. Technology, of course, travel, yes, thinking, yes, stuff with brains and how brains function and work. Are you seeing that with AI? Stuff like that. We also have Neptune's in the picture, right? Neptune is in sextile to Pluto and in sextile to Uranus. So now we have Pluto, the planet of power, in sextile to Neptune, illusions, dreams, delusions, fantasy, art, imagination. In sextile to Uranus, the great liberator, the shaker-upper, I roll on my side, I do things a little bit different, I'm rebellious. All of these things are in this minor, they call it a minor talent trine, just really facilitating and flowing. And this is just what's going to be working in the background for quite a while. So we just need to orient ourselves that as we listen to, whether it's my channel or any other channel that talks about like day to day or week to week stuff, this is running in the background. These like deeper systemic changes around how we're communicating, how we're dreaming, how we're engaging with technology and art, how we are connecting to each other collectively, is changing. It is changing. We already know it's changing. We're watching society change in ways that we probably never could have dreamed. And we're like, how did we get here? And it's not done yet. I don't think we even have any idea. I think because planet Neptune is a planet of confusion and delusion and like kind of the putting a little like pantyhose over the eyes, like that idea of like you can't really quite see, it's fog. I think we just are kind of needing to a little bit live in the mystery, to develop a lot of patience and calm and being able to kind of sit in the calm in the eye of the storm as these things are changing. And then when life asks us to shift into a better version of ourselves, into a more generous, loving, wise, connected, community oriented, heart centered person, we do those things. That's my inclination for all of that. This week we are going to get Uranus in Gemini going retrograde. I think Uranus is very gender neutral. That's how I feel about it. But Uranus is going to go back into Taurus, the very last degrees, because Uranus forgot to shake some things up one last time in the Earth sign of Taurus, which I think will probably be a little bit more around like all of the financial systems that we have, and certainly around resourcing food. We're already kind of seeing some of that, and certainly with how our prices and our grocery bills have gone up, I think there's more here. Certainly there's stuff around the tariffs, and that definitely happened with the Saturn story as well, and we're not done with that, right? So just know that those things are up too. We're going to get Mars square Jupiter on September 4th. I will talk about it on that day. Uranus retrograde, right? Uranus is stationary pretty much all week, right? It's moving real slow. And so what Uranus being stationed is going to do, like any other big slow planet stationing, especially that first station to go retrograde after it ingresses into a sign, it's going to go like, hey, pay attention to me. I have a story for you. I'm going to tell you what a lot of this transit of me being in Gemini is going to be about. So we need to pay attention to what's going on this week. Now we might not be able to parse it all out. It might be a very hindsight 2020 as we like go forward, years from now, and we're able to look back because we have a little bit more perspective and go, oh, that really is what the Uranus and Gemini story is about. But we can use the different keywords to kind of know, and we should be able to also put that into our charts as well. Where is Gemini in your chart? You can do it by whole sign or by any other chart system that you use. Where is that entry point? If it's going to cross house borders because you use a different house system besides whole sign houses, you'll know that the story is going to start somewhere when you gather kind of energy and bring it into the next house, right? If you use whole sign systems, you can just say, oh, it's going to be in my 10th, or it's going to be in my 8th. It's going to be shaking up my relationships in my 7th house, that sort of thing. And so you can kind of to be forewarned is to be forearmed, right? Something like that. Cool. We are in eclipse season, as I keep talking about, because that started with that new moon at 0 degrees. Nuts. About a week and a half ago, right? In Virgo. And now we are going to have a lunar total eclipse on September 7th at about 15 degrees and some change of Pisces. So really, if you have anything in the mutables, these are for you. If you have a mutable cross, as in your immutable rising sign, so Gemini, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces, this story could probably be a little bit more prominent. No one is safe from the eclipses. Anybody can be eclipsed, and there's lots of reasons for that. But in general, let's just think of eclipses as fated events, right? Fated new beginnings, fated endings, both at the same time, one without the other. She's real fun. We are in the portal. We are doing this. We are in eclipse season. We need to pay attention, kind of what we're being invited to let go and what is kind of being brought into our life at this time, because it can be things that really like shift our whole life into a different place in a different direction. And I think for the most part, I covered like these are the big. This is what's going on in the sky right now. And so we should get into the week now. Wednesday, September 3rd is Mercury's day. Mercury is now in Virgo. It's in the sign of both domicile and exaltation. This is where Mercury thrives, right? It's like analytical, critical, processing. Like the data has been like culled into what is essential. I like to think of Virgo as like an essential sign. It is about the essentiality. Is that a word? Of the thing, right? Is this the most important? Is this like distilled? There's a distillation that can happen in Virgo when it's operating at its best. Now, one of the shadow sides of Virgo is the paralysis of analysis. There's so many options. I want to get it perfect. And so instead of making a choice because I can't figure out what the perfect one is, I just freeze, right? So we need to be cautious of that, especially in Virgo season, because we have a lot of Virgo energy in the sky. The sun's in Virgo, the south node is in Virgo, Mercury is in Virgo. We got a lot of Virgo energy. Happy birthday, Virgo. Moon is out of balance today. Moon is in Cap. He's really trying to be the big boss babe. I'm all about my business. I got to get the things that I need to get done. Maybe feeling a little bit almost like there's like an internal withholding. I kind of liken it to like feeling really full up, like a balloon ready to pop. Because the moon is out of bounds, it's like I'm just gonna hold it all in right now. It can be like a fuck it, I'll do it myself kind of moon. 12:40 a.m. is the biggest aspect of the day. We get Mercury in Virgo square Uranus in Gemini. So sudden disruptions in thought, communication. This could be argumentative. This could be a sudden change of how we process and think and speak. This could be something that has to do with transportation, right? Flights, cars, all of the ways of modes of transportation, there could be some sort of disruption in those systems, or some sort of like flash in the pan new thing comes up to kind of surprise and shock us at this time. Because I think that there's definitely a cooperation here. And I say that because Uranus and Gemini is ruled by Mercury and Virgo. And so I think there's just like some sort of shock to these various systems that have to do with Gemini and Virgo things, right? Communication, processing, thinking, writing, speaking, driving, flying. Not really flying. Well, maybe Uranus is odd and different air modes of air travel, like helicopters and things like that. So we could see something come up there. It's also just like, and this energy is going to hold, for pretty much the day. So just be cautious of being argumentative with people, popping off in ways that are like, whoo, this could be like a flash of memory or a flash of like innovative, shocking new way of like doing something that has to do with thinking, processing, reading, writing, speaking. So it doesn't have to be all bad, but it could just be shocking and destabilizing. I think part of this squares have the nature of Mars, right? Is there's like a hit to it. There's a destabilization. It's like a pow and a bang, right? Instead of like a flow and an ease, like, it's like, right? The kind of two difference of those things. For the rest of the day, we have some kind of cranky aspects in the morning. Sesqui squares from the moon to Uranus and Mercury and Virgo. It's cranky, right? 4:04 a.m. Mercury quincunx retrograde Pluto. Pluto's asking Mercury to kind of like go deeper and make some sort of adjustments, probably based off of that square, to kind of maybe release or let go or eliminate something that we've been thinking, to make those like kind of interesting like psychological adjustments. And I don't think it feels necessarily very comfortable because it is a quincunx. We're going to get the moon square Mars. The fun crisis of awareness. This could be an angry flash. I think today feels like a lot, and then there's like an overdoing, maybe an overcompensating. We're going to get the moon opposite Jupiter in Cancer. So this could be an overcompensation or an overreaction based off of the things that you've had to realign with, rethink, have some sort of shock of opinion with. We're going to have I think, a very cranky aspect of the Sun Sesame Square retrograde Chiron. This is like some sort of like wounding around our ego and identity, and like really kind of uncomfy in our skin, maybe a little bit untethered in that moment. We're going to get the Moon Square retrograde Chiron in Aries at 9:18, and this kind of re-emphasizes that like sensitivity, feeling really sensitive, hurt in some sort of way. And then we're going to get a Moon in Capricorn Sesame Square, the Sun in Virgo. This is an Earth Sesame Square, so I think this is really about the practicality of things, maybe around the things that you're trying to do. Like, is this practical? Is this real? Like, feeling a bit like a crisis around like what needs to get done and trying to kind of figure it out. And again, that Virgo thing, try not to get into the paralysis of analysis. By the end of the night, 10:23 p.m., we do get a biquintile from the Moon to Mercury in Virgo. And so I think after all of this, this day, I don't love this day, we kind of get to a place where we can like really almost like uh, psychologically or be able to communicate like where we're at and what we need to do. Thursday, September 4th is Jupiter's day. Jupiter is pretty happy as a clam in Cancer. And the moon is back in bounds. So hopefully the emotions will have kind of simmered down a little bit, whether that is from like holding them too tightly inside or having some sort of flash out. These things could have both been true with the day before. I think this day is going to feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more resolved, a little bit more like we can get things done, not so much going up in the head, though we are going to get the moon. The moon in Capricorn sextile, retrograde Saturn in Pisces. I hope this is going to just kind of bring like some emotional resolve, feeling a bit more stable, feeling a little bit more like we can kind of work on the things that we're trying to either recreate or also finish up, right? Because it's retrograde Saturn in Pisces. Maybe we're trying to do this work to kind of tie up loose ends, and we're just kind of working on that now. And also because that is at the very, very last degree, because Saturn just retrograded back into Pisces. So it's at 29 and the moon is at the end of Capricorn. So there's something about just like maybe some sort of emotional release and ending here that feels like a resolve. 3:31 a.m. the moon is going to enter Aquarius. Now there's like a detachment, like, I went there, now I'm just going to drop it. I'm going to maybe focus a little bit more on like my community efforts, be a little bit more connected to community, but not in the way where like you feel like you need anything, right? This is like more being about everybody else more than about yourself in that moment, for good or for worse, certainly. Moon sextile retrograde Neptune in Aries is being able to kind of like dream and intuit a bit, and this can feel really social, maybe connecting in some sort of social causes in this moment, and also just feeling a bit dreamy, but not in any sort of like super emotional way, but just like dreamy. We're going to get a moon trine Uranus in Gemini. I love the moon Uranus trines and sextiles and conjunctions. It's just kind of like being able to like think and feel and behave out of the box and in a different way that kind of is more freeing and liberated and like open. This could be about something like changing some sort of habit, maybe what you went through yesterday and what you went through in the morning in terms of releasing. Now you are able to just kind of suddenly take something new on, kind of be in a different way. 6:40 a.m. we're going to get the moon conjunct Pluto. It's going to allow us to go deep. This can also be a bit of a intense, right? There's maybe some sort of intensity in like how we are interacting with group how we're performing that. There could be some sort of maybe feeling a bit shocked. Moon Pluto contacts can be very intense. And because it's an Aquarius, Aquarius can be a sign that deals in trauma, from being like ostracized, outcast, feeling like the rebel, right? Feeling different. And so the Moon Pluto, retrograde Pluto, contact could just be like, feeling a bit like rebel yell. I would love that for us. Moon quincunx Mercury, we're being asked to, shift how we feel in regards to how we are thinking and speaking. And it's not really quite, we could be just kind of feeling out of sorts in this moment, that we're not really able to like fully communicate what we're feeling, and we don't really know what to do with that. It can just kind of bring up some anxiety in that moment. We're going to get Mars in Libra square Jupiter in Cancer at 18 degrees 35 minutes. This is the biggie of the day. It's going to happen at around 8 p.m. So just know that this has been forming all day. Let's be careful with how we use our energy. Let's be careful about the ways we go in trying to achieve our desires. Let's be a little bit cautious about how we force our way into situations or how we go about doing the things that we do. Now, this could just bring on some sort of like creative energy and like how we like connect. But because Mars in Libra is not the best place for Mars doesn't love being in Libra, right? Mars doesn't behave well in Libra. I think that one, Jupiter with the square could go, especially if it's an overcoming square, it's like, hey, I need you to behave a little bit better, right? Like he's over the top and like, hey, man, like you gotta calm down a little bit. But Mars is like, I want to do it. I want to go. I want to bound out. I want to use all this energy. I got a lot of stuff going on, and then kind of overdoes it. But hopefully not too bad. But because, Mars does have to do with violence and does have to do with aggression, does have to do with anger, does have to do, we can't forget that what Mars signifies passion, or will. Uh, we can't forget that Mars is still Mars, even though Mars is in the sign of like peace and justice and fairness and balance and relationship and harmony and beauty. We can't forget that because Mars doesn't want to be in there, right? So I think that there could be a moment of an opportunity of overblown aggression happening at this time because Jupiter and Cancer seem to be a lot about like homeland security and feeling safe in our territory and all of that stuff. I wonder if there's like some sort of clash here that has to do with all of the people being snatched off the streets and stuff like that. So we will see. That is really going to be forming all day. It is going to flow into the next day until it separates. So just be cautious of how you use your will, anger, aggression, energy, the way that you go and do things. Let's just be interested in using our energy wisely because there will likely be an overabundance of it. Friday, September 5th is Venus's day. Venus is still in Leo, demanding all of the attention, love, praise, loyalty that she could possibly desire, while also being warm hearted and loyal herself. Early in the morning, really the only Ptolemaic aspect that we have, one of the only Ptolemaic aspects that we have in the day, is that Moon is going to come and oppose Venus, kind of bringing up issues. And this is in the middle of the night, so it's brief, and it could just make people feel a little bit unsettled or uncomfortable with Venusian principles, right? Femininity, love, value, money. Um, the idea of connection and trust, the idea of being in relationship. There could just be something that comes up, especially if you're just up in the middle of the night, like with your person. There could just be a little thing, not that bad. We're going to get Moon Quincunx Sun, 3:16 a.m., a little bit of anxiety, 6:05 a.m. The moon is, and 8:49 a.m. The moon is going to semi-square retrograde Saturn and retrograde Neptune. I think that this just kind of feels like something's coming up about like the things that we have to finish up, and like the ways that we're trying to like do the things we're envisioning, and it feels like a niggling in the back of the mind, nothing too major. 1:13 p.m. Moon Quincunx Jupiter. This kind of seems to me like an anxious adjustment of like what our goals are. We need to shift. Something's not jiving with like what our hopes are, what our dreams are, what our desires are, right? We have the moon in Aquarius that really wants there to be kind of an equanimity, may not be the right word, but like an equalness, a sameness of everything. And like Jupiter in Cancer doesn't care about that. Jupiter in Cancer cares about being safe and feeling whole and feeling secure. And there's just kind of a disruption there in that moment. So, there could be, try not to go overboard in one way or the other, trying to like get what like makes you particularly feel safe or secure in that moment, because it's not really that all that possible. 1:51 p.m. Moon trine Mars in Libra, and the void, of course, is going to begin. Moon trine Mars, great working aspect in terms of like just getting stuff done. I think that today is a good day for trying to work through the day and getting things done, so long as you're kind of able to emotionally roll through the punches and like make whatever little adjustments you need to make without like really getting to use that moon in Aquarius to just kind of detach from going too deep into it. Just like, it's not that deep. I'm just going to do my day. I'm just going to flow through. I have the energy to get things done. That's the moon trine Mars. We're going to get a cute quintile between Venus and Uranus. Just a different way of loving and feeling free and whole and engaging in like maybe art. And it's flirty, she's cute, we like it. Big aspect of the day is Uranus is going to be retrograding. He's going to flip into retrograde. He's been stationed. What has been going on with Uranus? What has been going on with communications and data and information and thinking and processing and how information is shared? Like, what's been going on is a really important question for us to continue to hold this whole week, because Uranus is not moving. He is, like I said earlier in this podcast, like Goku powering up and just kind of radiating. He's like, pay attention to me, kind of thing. So we need to pay attention to what Uranus is telling us, because that's going to be a part of the Uranus and Gemini story for the next 7 years. That's the biggie of the day. And I think that there could just feel like a little bit more electricity, because Uranus is electricity, a little bit more like there could be some shocking events that go down, some destabilizing events that go down, surprising, right? This is a planet of shock, awe, surprise, liberation, eccentricity, like what is different, what is new, like just the shock. So there could be, especially with that, the most probably crystallized point of being stationed and turning retrograde, there could be big events that happen on this day, probably the day before and after, around Uranian things. Saturday, September 6th is Saturn's day. We just need to remember that Saturn just retrograded back into Pisces. And now we have a lot of planets now retrograde. We have Pluto, we have Saturn, we have Neptune, we have Uranus just having gone retrograde yesterday. And so we are definitely in a time of maybe revisiting some stuff that was going on in the past number of months that we kind of need to either tie some bows on, right? Dot I's and, cross T's, finish up, sign the deal, like wrap it up before we can really, really jet off in new places. And so if you find that like your forward trajectory has been like, oh, I gotta look at that again, just know that that's part of the process, right? And Paula Abdul, 2 steps forward or 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Anyways, I just showed my age. It's fine. All right. I don't love this day for feeling like happy, happy, joy, joy. I think that there's going to feel like a lot of kind of electricity and a little bit of like cranky anxiousness, a lot of anxiousness kind of in the sky for the whole day. And some sensitivity to 56 a.m. moon sextile retrograde Chiron. Chiron is like the wound, this wound you can like poke at, right? And when moon is in a good aspect to Chiron, it does give us the ability to kind of like maybe visit that wound, but it's a little raw, right? A little sensitive. We are going to have Mercury biquintile Pluto in Aquarius at 5:51 a.m. This is a cool biquintile, right? Of the quintile series, quintiles are talents. Mercury Pluto is like to be able to get to the bottom of things, to like all of those little systems and like data pathways are like zipping and moving along together. Like this is like solution based thinking that is just like deep and like really considers every neural pathway, and I love it. That is a really, really great biquintile. It's going to hold for probably part of the day. 8:54 a.m. the moon is going to enter Pisces, and the void, of course, is going to end. When the moon enters Pisces, now we get into, sensitivity, intuitiveness, like emotional. This is, the moon that is really good at like, you can watch a movie to make yourself cry on this day, to like really just kind of like feel all the feelings. A moon in Pisces, and Pisces placements are very porous in that like they just kind of absorb. It's an absorption kind of moon. It feels it all. It's senses it all. It's sensitive, right? Can be a bit psychic, a bit. There could be some delusion in there. The intuition is off the charts often. So then we're going to get the moon is going to square retrograde Uranus in Gemini. Like this feels like a shock. This feels like a shock that also like has to do with like grief. It's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable feeling. And I think it could feel kind of like being like a live wire in that moment. Venus is going to sesqui square retrograde Saturn in Pisces. This seems like some sort of financial thing that's going on with our money, probably tariffs. This can also just be feeling like really blocked in your relationships. Like you've hit a wall, you're feeling really frustrated, you're trying to move forward, you're like really, really doing the hard work, and like nothing is really quite doing what you need it to do. So just like try to be patient and do the work that you can. And then we're going to get the moon doing some sesqui squares to Jupiter in Cancer and Mars in Libra. Sesqui squares are squares and a half, which is like conflict with a little kick of, it doesn't feel great. Sesqui squares have the shape of Scorpio. So like that, like critical, like intense nature that we need to like kind of work through. And so I do think that sesqui square with Jupiter in Cancer can just have us feeling like our emotions are really, really overblown. I mean, it's moon in Pisces, right? And Jupiter in Cancer. These are emotional signs. These are water signs. And so I think that like the feelings overfloweth in every single way. And then I think the frustration kind of sets in if that a couple hours later with the sesqui square to Mars and Libra, maybe trying to like what you want to do, what you're trying to do to like get through this, to work through this. And maybe you feel kind of blocked emotionally, or you feel kind of, I think it's not blocked. I think it's more frustrated, and like things are really tough and they can feel really, really challenged, especially maybe in relationships, or the sorts of things or conflicts that come up in relationships. So all that to say is Saturday, I don't love it, but we're going to get through it. Sunday, September 7th is the sun's day. And we also have a total lunar eclipse in Pisces on this day. Sun is in Virgo, moon is in Pisces, opposite signs, right, on an axis. This eclipse is going to be happening at about 15 degrees, 22 minutes of Pisces. So if you have mutable planets around those degrees, give or take 3-4 degrees, this one could be particularly impactful. But all that to say is, because we are in the eclipse season, this is an eclipse, these can impact pretty much anyone, right? Eclipses, faded endings and beginnings. And because this is a full moon, right? The opposition between the sun and the moon is usually a time of culmination and release, right? This is a time to let go of things. Maybe even because it's an eclipse, it has to do with like faded, almost forced letting go of. The lunar eclipse is happening on the north node. So because it's like releasing something to emotionally go into a new chapter, right? With the north node being where the moon is, it's like to emotionally go to this new beyond because of this release. The phases between the moon and the node and the south node and the sun are in new phases. No, they are in and balsamic phases. Sorry, they're wrapping up something. So again, Pisces is like the end of signs, right? It's the last sign of the zodiac. It has to do with endings. We have the full moon, which has to do with a culmination of release, also has to do with endings. We have the phases of the sun and the moon to the nodes, and these like balsamic end phases. So it's just like endings upon endings upon endings. What do we need to let go of in order for us to do that north node in Pisces, embracing a like culmination of everything, of like, being fully within our spirit and our imagination, and in like an ultimate sense of connection? We have Mercury involved, of course, within 5 degrees of the sun. Mercury is more or less, they say, able to withstand being so close to the sun while it's in Virgo, because it's in Virgo. He's in his exaltation, he's in his domicile. So he's like, I can kind of withstand the heat here. It's going into the south node. So and also into this combustion. So there's still something about also releasing maybe something that we're telling ourselves, the things that we're thinking and the things that we're processing, maybe some way that we're speaking to ourselves or to others. We have to let something go in order to embrace something new. It is interesting that Saturn has just retrograded back into Pisces. He's not close enough to be considered like in an aspect besides co-present with these Pisces planets. But it's still there's something here, the Pisces story has some meat here. So does the Virgo story, certainly. But Saturn also going back and like, I have to finish something up, is telling us something as well. The full moon and the moon in Pisces, specifically being ruled by that Jupiter in Cancer, which is in trine to the moon, I think that there's like this circuit here of belief and feeling and intuition. And I think that Jupiter is really kind of here to like help and maybe be a balm or a facilitator, right? To kind of bring a sense of hopefully ease, because eclipses don't have to be easy. And I certainly think out of all of the lunations that we have for this Virgo Pisces story of this eclipse season, I think that maybe this is one of the easier ones, because I do think that full, um, I think that solar eclipse that's coming up is going to be wild. Um, so I think that there is a facilitation of flow and release and ease, and something, maybe there's a little bit of an injection of faith and of like wisdom, and hopefully a feeling of like safety, and being able to release the things that we need to release. And we just need to remember that there are still those big systemic planets, working in the background during this. All of these planets are a part of the eclipse story. It's just the ones that are more intensely involved are obviously the moon and the sun, Mercury because it's close, Saturn because it just went into Pisces, and Jupiter because it's the ruler of the moon. But we do have Pluto, Uranus are still, they're within 13 degrees, 13 minutes of a trine. So they're so, so, so close. So they're definitely doing some work. We have Pluto, Neptune sextile. We have Neptune, Uranus sextile. That little trine, the mini talent trine, is still like working in the background as these other things are happening. Now, kind of like one of the bigger, or an interesting complication of this lunation, is that we do still have Mars within a degree of that square to Jupiter, just kind of adding oomph, adding maybe some anger, a flash of energy, of aggression, of something here. Whereas this lunation could be pretty pleasant for what it's worth, but like Mars is just kind of there throwing a little bit of a spanner in the works. The other thing that is interesting is like Mars is with a square to Jupiter, just be careful of like overdoing it. We still have that energy kind of here. Venus is trying to get to that sextile with Mars, hopefully like give a little bit of an ease. So I think that Mars, for what it's worth, is a little bit of a spanner in the works, maybe some difficulty, maybe some anger, and what we need to release. Mars is also applying to an opposition with Chiron. So just be careful of the sensitivity here. Release what needs to be released. Embrace what needs to be embraced. We are in eclipse season. Pay attention to where this story is kind of playing out in your houses, right? Where is the Virgo Pisces axis in your chart? And then also think about where the moon and the sun are, and also where the moon is the ruler of what house and the sun is the ruler of what house, right? So for instance, I'm a Virgo rising, so using whole sign, the moon is the ruler of my 11th house and the sun is the ruler of my 12th house. So this lunation, even though it's happening in my 1st and 7th houses by whole sign, ultimately will have its impact in my 11th and 12th houses. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And so just know that though it's happening in one place, it will affect another place, and it has some remnants to have to do with where the sun and moon are also in your chart. And that's just for further delineation, depending very specifically on your individual chart. So all that being said, happy eclipse. Yeah. Work it out. Cry it out. Release it out. Feel it out. Monday, September 8th is the moon's day. We have a sign change for the moon today, going from watery, intuitive, emotional, sensitive, psychic Pisces going into Aries later in the afternoon. We need to remember too, we just went through a full moon lunation. I think that we're all kind of feeling like we got put through the wash a little bit. Lots of big feelings coming up, especially with that trine to Jupiter. The feelings overfloweth, and now we're kind of having to deal with the endings of things. And at 5:03 a.m., we do have the Mercury in Virgo, sesqui square, retrograde Chiron in Aries. I think that this is really like a sort of like frustration around what we kind of like know we need to do in order to facilitate a sense of healing or fixing. I think that there's like a kind of like a really like a deep like need or intuitive way of like trying to fix ourselves, and we can't really quite do it. And maybe it's just we can't really quite talk about how deep our various wounds are. We all have wounds. We've all been wounded, and we've all been wounded by other people, this administration, just being alive. And so I think that there's maybe just feeling really intellectually unsettled by what we are grappling with. 10:43 a.m., the moon in Pisces is going to conjunct the retrograde Saturn in Pisces. And this is going to be at that last degree, right? At that 29th degree. So I really think that this is kind of like the button on the full moon of release is like the ending. This can bring a sense of like feeling really solemn and somber. This can also feel like we kind of want to set ourselves aside, kind of self isolate, find a quiet place. This can feel kind of meditative too. And also, because it has to do with that 29th degree, this really is like endings, right? And we are really trying to wrap up whatever that Saturn and Pisces story is for us. There's going to be many more Pisces moons coming and doing this work. But I do think that this particular conjunction is interesting because it has to do with the eclipse as well. 11:37 a.m., the moon is going to enter Aries. You're going to be like, I got to get out of here. I am now feeling things and reacting instinctively and quickly. I can feel, with the moon in Aries, we have to remember that a moon in Aries is ruled by a Mars in whatever sign. So it's a spicy moon. It might use anger as the reaction first, or a impulsiveness. There's an impulsivity to a moon in Aries. I got to go get it done, which just do it, which just, cut the cord, do the thing, jump off the bridge, like whatever it is. The moon in Aries is just instinctively reacting to things, and then they thus feel things quickly, process them then quickly, and often just fix a dent and forget it. Moon conjunct retrograde Neptune at 1:32 can bring dream and vision, and like I know how I creatively want to go off in my day. I'm feeling really psychic and intuitive and like kind of fired up. Great. Moon sextile retrograde Uranus in Gemini, and then sextile retrograde Pluto in Aquarius. This is, I think, has to do with like feeling different. It's like you went through the pressure washer of all that Pisces stuff, and now you're like new. You're going off in the distance. You're like taking a new journey and a new emotional journey. And then you're like, yeah, but I'm going to change it a little bit this way. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper and like make these like kind of psychic shifts for myself. I like that the moon is kind of coming in and like hitting that small talent trine of these planets and kind of bringing in these bigger systemic changes into ourselves. Then we're going to get a sesqui square from the moon to Venus in Leo. This is going to happen at 3:06 p.m. Fire signs, fired up. We could be feeling kind of impassioned about something having to do with our relationships or our values. But this can feel really, really uncomfortable or critical, or really frustrating in this moment. It is a quicker transit, so we just kind of need to like let the feelings come up and let them dissipate. Do what a moon in Aries is really good at, which is like feel the feelings and let them go, but try not to flash too hard, right? This could have to do with like feeling respected or noticed or considered inside of our relationships. And so I just think that there's like a little bit of a caution to just kind of try to simmer down a little bit. 6:30 p.m. we're going to get the sun sesqui-square retrograde Pluto in Aquarius. This is kind of an interesting sesqui-square for me because I do love Virgo and Aquarius together. I think that they're like kind of the great intellectual signs of the zodiac. Not to say that other signs can't be intellectual. Please don't roast me online. But there's something about service and sacrifice and community that's kind of trying to be like brought up here, like a light put on, but there's something that isn't quite working right. And maybe that's what it is like something comes to our attention around like how these systems are working that are not really quite working for us all. And that is kind of revealed to us and it feels real uncomfy. I mean, we're in real uncomfy times. So that makes sense. And that's kind of how the day ends. And know that that sesqui-square is going to hold pretty much all day because the sun only moves 1 degree in a day. So all that to say, I think that this day is good news, bad news, wares. It's both. Like it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Try to get your work done. It is Monday. I think that this is going to feel like the day is going by pretty fast, especially when you get the vibe shift in when the moon enters Aries. So really try to ride that to like just doing what you need to do in front of you. Tuesday, September 9th is Mars's day. Mars is still in Libra, not in the sign that he is very comfortable in, definitely in the sign of debility. So it doesn't have all of the resources he needs to do to just like really go off in the direction that he wants, right? Like Mars is now like considering other people's points of views and, you know, having to do this together and like having to do it in a way that is more like harmonizing and feminizing and, maybe a little bit more diplomatic, right? And Mars doesn't care about diplomacy, but Mars has to when Mars is in Libra right now. So something to keep in mind. We have this day, I feel like it's kind of flip-floppy, 10:09 a.m. Moon in Aries is quintile retrograde Pluto. I think that this just kind of brings like a depth of feeling that it's not like sensitivity though. It's just like I think it brings an intensity of feeling, but it's not necessarily in a bad way. Though a moon in Aries can be intense, but like in a flash. Moon quincunx Mercury, 10:30 a.m. Just be cautious of misunderstandings. You know, being able to really communicate what you are feeling or thinking in the moment. There could be some disruption in how that can work out. You might have to make some adjustments. This might be the time where you're like, you know, did you really understand what I said here? Or maybe being forced to make those sorts of adjustments for yourself. Like, oh, okay, now that I have this piece of information that you just told me, now I need to make some sort of adjustment here. It doesn't feel great. I don't really love it, but here we are. And then we're going to have that quincunx to the sun from the moon at 4:34 p.m. This can just feel like anxiety. This can just feel out of sorts, just feeling kind of uncomfortable. We have to remember that the quincunx is a 150-degree aspect. And they can't really see each other. So it's like the moon, our like intuition, our feeling, our habits, and the sun, how we be, you know, how we are, our soul, right, are not jiving. They can't see each other, which creates like some sort of like disharmony between like outside and the inside, right? So just know that this day particularly could feel a bit of like out of sorts, and just know that so that you can move forward. There is, try to harness this of all of the things. Today, we're going to try to harness at 6:06 p.m. The moon is going to trine Venus and Leo. we have these two fire signs, Moon in Aries and Venus in Leo, are going to come into this harmonious trine, which can be really pleasurable, super creative, right? It could be like a bit artistic, could also be dramatic. This is about like engaging in pleasure and art and things that you think are beautiful, that taste nice, that feel sweet, right? So engaging in that moment and like kind of knowing that even though there's some uncomfy bits of the day, that we can still like engage in pleasure, I think would be, and also like self-pleasure, right? The things that we really want to do, and even just like by ourselves. We don't need other people to like be a part of this journey with us. We're just like, I'm going to go to a garden and I'm going to go pick some flowers and make myself a bouquet, or I'm going to listen to my favorite records and dance in my living room. Like engage in that. At 7:42 p.m., we get the moon square Jupiter in Cancer. So we need to know that there could be some sort of emotional overreaction or overreaching at this time. So be careful that whatever the pleasures were that you were into, that you don't like go overboard. This could really be like, I ate a whole pint of ice cream. That's what it feels like. I emotionally impulsively ate a whole thing of ice cream because it felt nice, and Sydney told me to go and like engage in pleasures of life. I'm not saying that. Be cautious of not overdoing it here in this moment. We get acute by quintile to Mercury, how we are thinking, how we're feeling. They're in just like an ease and a flow and an alignment. At 11:53 p.m., go to bed before this, we are going to get the moon opposite Mars in Libra, and the void, of course, is going to begin. Moon opposite Mars is just like an emotional, angry outburst, right? This could be like, around what you think is fair and just. This can feel, this outburst could happen in terms of like relationships with other people that you're having, or just like a relationship that you're having to something. This literally could be around like identity and relationship. This could be around like what you literally think is fair and just. It's just an angry outburst and awareness, a overflowing of emotion. This is very spicy. This is a spicy moment. And so we want to be cautious to that, and also be very aware of like any accidents, overexertion of your body or of your energy, of anger in that moment as well. Again, moon in Aries, moon is going fast. So just be cautious, starting around 11 p.m. for a couple of hours. Just go to bed before that. Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro Weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com. That is D as in dog, astrology.com, to check me out, and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.